host, Angie Grissom. Today, I'm so excited to dive into navigating the increased complexities to growth. Here with us today is Gale Crosley. Gale is a pioneer in the accounting space. She is an award-winning strategic growth consultant who has worked with around 500 mid-market and large CPA and chartered accounting firms worldwide. For 16 years, Inside Public Accounting has named Gale one of the top most recommended consultants in the Best of the Best annual survey. She's worked with many firms on their strategic growth planning. Gale, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Let's jump right in.
Thank you, Angie. It's great to be here, and hello, audience. Yes, we should jump right in.
It's a great topic. It's definitely a great topic. So let's just start with this. How are firms approaching growth today from a strategic level?
Very good question, Angie. They're not.
Okay, yeah.
They're not. There is no future thing. It's gone out the window. And I think the reason for that is because as you look at the top the last many years around what are the top issues facing CPAs and CPA firms, growth up until about 2 years ago was in the top three of the top five, always in the top five for sure, and in the top three most of the time. It isn't even on the list now. So as a result, firms are so sucked into fulfilling demand that they cannot come up for air with their nose up to the wind to drive demand. And so you see them pulling into just getting things out the door, getting resources to the table, and not being able to really execute a growth plan. As a result of that, we have an interesting situation that when the tide turns, which it will, that they're not going to be prepared and they will be caught somewhat flat-footed. And I will tell you that if you take a look at the last 30 years of year-over-year organic revenue growth percent from, I think, IPA, it looks like a roller coaster ride. And you're whipping around on a roller coaster, most firms do, but the ones who are really with it and more sophisticated aren't doing that. So I'm going to talk about the handful of firms who are sophisticated enough and wise enough to know that you cannot just ignore tomorrow. When you look at what is the role of a leader, period, in a firm, it is all about strategy. And I use the word future and strategy interchangeably, because if in fact it's about strategy, well, strategy is about where you're going, and where you're going is about the future, right?
Right.
So, and the C-level people or facsimile thereof in our firms, always their job is to be at the top of the mountain and looking out to, the next peak and where we're going and so forth. And right now, a lot of our leaders are sucked down into the valley and cannot, stay up at the top of the mountain to look, at where we're going. But the ones that really understand this know that they have to double down and make a special, purposeful, focused effort to look at the future.
Definitely. And Gale, I remember coming out of the pandemic, the firms that we knew that kept their finger on the pulse of growth and really continued to focus on growth had the best years they'd ever had in the history of the firm. You probably saw the same thing.
Oh, and I worked with several of them. In fact, I remember one of my firms who was lopping along at 10%. And when the Great Recession hit, we drove it up to 14%, and they have been at 14% ever since. And in fact, I was looking a few months ago at the top 20 fastest growing firms in the country.
Yeah.
9 of them are my clients.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it is really important to continue to focus on growth no matter what is going on. And we talk about there are different dials to growth, but you should never take your eyes off of it. Here's a topic that seems to be everywhere, Gale. How has private equity and merger activity changed our outlook on growth?
Ah, well, for some firms, of course, they're sitting there going, you know, I'm not sure what's going on in the future, and I just need to know, have information about what private equity is and what private equity does and what is that going to mean to me. But a lot of them are sitting there not knowing exactly what to do. But I will tell you this, because I'm involved now in the private equity, world, because we all are at some level. And they are changing the neighborhood pretty significantly. Okay. They are bringing best practices from corporate America over here, and they're expecting best practices from corporate America. And when I came over to CPA land back over here, about 20 years ago now, I was surprised at the level of sophistication or lack thereof relative to the corporate world. If corporate was a 10, and I asked audiences over my early years, what do you think is our level of sophistication relative to corporate America? And the audience estimated score was about a 3.5. Now, we can't operate. Now, we're probably above a 3.5, but we're not at a 10. But when you have private equity money flowing in, and you have private equity resources and people and methodologies and influence, they're going to bring these platform firms up to a 10, and they're going to expect that the firms that they acquire are going to become a 10. Therefore, you don't sit in the house that you used to have when the entire neighborhood around you is changing and you say, well, I'm not going to change. You've got to up your game and become as sophisticated as your competition will be, which they will be all around you. And that means the sophistication of corporate America relative to growth.
That's a really great point. Even if firms are not involved in private equity, the fact that so many are, it really does change the competitive landscape, and it requires a different way of competing. This question is about a marketing director's role. So how do you think the marketing director role is changing?
Well, it's changing a lot, and it will continue to change a lot to what I have been espousing for quite a few years, because, I spent 20 years in corporate America, so I know what it looks like, right? And what it looks like is a chief growth officer. It's not a marketing director or a chief marketing officer even, it's a chief growth officer. Now, what is a chief growth officer? A chief growth officer, it has, some of you have heard about my three-legged stool, where strategic growth is the seat of the stool, and that's where the chief growth officer fits. And the three functional disciplines that they're responsible for and very comfortable with are the marketing leg is one leg, the sales leg is the second leg, and the innovation leg is the third leg. And the way that they connect together in corporate America is how the expectation level is going to be in the future, and what we need to do with it is going to be. So one informs the other, and the way that we execute it with pipeline management and with lead development being, informing the innovation of our services, and the sales organization feeding back to the innovation role, and all these things are going to be what is expected. And that's a decision point that the marketing director needs to make. And what I mean by that, Angie, is that having worked with dozens and dozens of marketing directors and getting a number of them up to the chief growth officer status, what I'm finding is there are marketing people who don't want to be chief growth officer, never wanted to be chief growth officer. They are marketing people through and through, and that's what their passion is, and that's their purpose on the planet. So that means that we're going to have chief marketing officers who are going to get up to an extremely high level of sophistication on the marketing leg of this three-legged stool. But we are also probably going to have chief growth officers who have the enthusiasm for taking marketing, sales, and innovation and integrating them into the C-level job of driving strategic revenue for the firm. And if I were a marketing person right now, I would really be understanding that and really thinking about it as we go into our future, because I find that if it's unclear in the marketing person's mind whether this is what they want or not, then it's certainly going to be unclear as the managing partner and other people around them become more and more inquisitive about how corporate operates, because they're going to see the evidence of it in the competitiveness in the marketplace.
That's been a common theme, Gail, in terms of connecting the dots and really elevating the role of the marketing director, the marketing function, making sure that they have a seat at the table, because it should be a strategic decision. It's really frustrating for me when I see that there's such a disconnect between strategic planning and what the marketing director's doing, what their initiatives are, what HR is doing, and things like that. So, inclusivity and connectivity has been a major theme of this series. So, in that vein, what about niche development? What is the role of niche development in growth today? Do you think it's more or less important than a few years ago?
It is absolutely critical. If you take a look at why is it critical, it's because of where we are in our life cycle. And those of you who have heard me talk about life cycles before, this will be you'll say, aha, yeah, I remember that, or I know that already. And that is the Boston Consulting Group did work many, many years ago on all markets go through a natural and predictable life cycle. And that's when the revenues, if you can think of a graph, start really low, and then they hockey stick up in the middle of the life cycle of a profession or an industry, and then they plane out in the mature stages. And so you have the early stage, what I call the diamond in the rough, which is the go-go years, the cash cow, and then the fat cat. Well, we are in fat cat stage. And there's strategic imperatives for every single one of those. As we went through these through the 1970s and 80s, 90s, and like that, we went through really a lot of go-go years and so forth in our core offerings. The strategic imperatives in cash cow and fat cat are to innovate and drive efficiency and specialize. So specialize and innovate are so critical when we are in these. It's not a personal opinion or anything like that. It's a strategic imperative. It's best practices. So it will be even more and more and more so. And it's not going back to what it used to be.
Got it. Well, Gail, this has been such a great conversation. I'm looking forward to diving right back in after this brief word from the Association for Accounting Marketing.
Whether part of a team or a department of one, individuals responsible for growth in the accounting profession join AIM to advance their careers and contribute at a high level to their firm's success. Members of AIM receive access to resources to help in their job and establish their reputation as a skilled professional, a network of peers who face the same industry challenges and can offer solutions, and a wide range of professional development and networking opportunities. Join AIM today. To learn more, visit the website at accountingmarketing.org. Again, that's accountingmarketing.org.
All right, welcome back. So, Gail, changing direction a little bit, what role should technology and innovation play in growth?
Angie, for many years, there was no role. Technology was living in the back room, and it was infrastructure. It was practice management systems and the like. And even CRM, there was a very thin thread of CRM capability and driving growth, but that has all changed in the last 6 to 8 years as we have had these platforms come available to us in order to drive new services. And it all started with the cloud, because the cloud opened up unlimited capacity for data communications and processing capability. And that's why you see today data analytics, AI, machine learning, cyber, on blockchain, on and on, RPA, continuous audit. And what this has done is allowed us to take these services or to take these platforms and capabilities and embed them in our services to drive growth, to drive new revenues, and to drive more profitability in our existing revenues. And as a result, technology's come out of the back room and into the front room. We didn't really need a product management function. We didn't need a product marketing function. I want to come to that if you'll remind me to come back to product marketing. And we didn't need a chief innovation officer. We needed a CIO, a chief information officer, that was worried about the plumbing. They were worried about the infrastructure and the ways that we were fulfilling demand with support of these technology-driven, systems. Now it's in the front room, which means that not only is it going to drive efficiency and quality in our service offerings, which maybe don't drive revenue, but drive profitability, but you take it up to the next level, which is you can use them to drive revenue, brand new advisory services that are data analytics driven and things like this. So it's all about embracing innovation and finding where those opportunities are with business use cases to drive revenue.
So product marketing.
Product marketing. Okay. So our marketing people generally have been people that came out of the branding side, out of the market positioning side, out of the side that was not product marketing. Product marketing and product management really are kissing cousins, tied at the hip. Really is this discipline of developing and packaging services. And we really haven't done much with that in our profession. Everything's been kind of a one-off. Oh, we did a cash management project over here last year. Oh yeah, we had an outsourced CFO over there. So the whole product marketing function hasn't necessarily existed. I will tell you, I can count on, a couple of hands and have some fingers left of people who literally came up through product marketing versus positioning and branding and, and PR and that sort of thing. We're going to need to embrace it. If I were a chief marketing officer today or a marketing director, I would go find someone who came up through product marketing. Even better is a marketing person who came through product management, who actually had to manage the service itself and work with the technical people to provide market feedback to the technical people about what the market wanted, and then help inform the shape and design of the service offering, and then be responsible for the promotion of it and the success of getting early adopter programs and all the things that product marketing and product management is about.
That's really interesting. That's a fascinating thought. And things probably people aren't considering. They've just not really thought that way. But I love it. So final question for you, Gale. So what do you say to firms that have put the brakes on growth? How should they address growth in their new strategic plan?
That's a really simple one, Angie, which is they need to do it.
There you go. All right. Fair enough.
They need to put it back in.
Yeah.
When strategic planning is done, usually it starts with our goals and objectives and what's our vision for the future and so forth. And if you really stayed with that theme, you would say things like, how big do we want to be? How much do we want to grow? How, where do we want to be in our niches and in our geographies and all that. But it may be so in strategic planning right now, but very quickly it goes into, but what are the challenges and opportunities? And we don't have enough people, right? And it just goes right over here to, if you look at, I'm going to, as an aside, I'm going to park that for a moment and come back to it. If you look at a company or a firm, there are two pieces to a company or a firm: driving demand and fulfilling demand. That's what they do. And then the functions, support that, like HR and IT and marketing, but driving demand and fulfilling demand is what a company is all about. And so the driving demand piece is all about how are we going to do it, where are we going to do it, et cetera, to drive it, meaning to drive strategic revenue growth. And then the fulfilling demand is well, how are we going to support it? But what is happening in planning now is, where do we want to be with growth? We don't have to worry about driving demand. The demand is driving us. Fish are jumping in the boat. So, okay, let's over here. And now 90% of the strategic planning is, how are we going to help these fish who are jumping in the boat?
How do we handle it? Yeah.
So I would say that my practical advice is this. In the strategic plan, first of all, please get yourself to the table. And if you're not being invited to the table, go tell somebody important, that, listen, you might want to have me at the table here, because although we're, the fish are jumping in the boat right now, there's a tomorrow, I hope, for our firm.
Yeah.
And my job as the marketing person, because marketing people are supposed to be on the nose of the ship. You are the stewards of making sure that driving demand and thinking about driving profitable revenues here is your job, right? And because you're the closest to it, other than the managing partner, you're the closest to it. So make sure that you are there. You think of this as your fiduciary responsibility to keep them focused as much as you can. And whenever they get confused about that, I usually say, stop just a moment. You're talking about fulfilling demand now. Let's get back over to driving demand. And I have to do that all the time. And I've had to do that all the time for years now, because they get sucked into, they're both the same. And you got to say, wait a minute, bifurcate the conversation and talk now about this, not that.
Got it. Well, it's such a critical and valuable role. And I agree with that. A seat at the table is so critically important. Gale, it has been great chatting with you. I love your perspective and unique perspective and your history and all that you're doing. You've definitely provided some incredible insights for everyone for strategic planning and accounting firms. So thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to let people know about before signing off, and how can our audience best get in touch with you or find out more about you and your work?
Well, my website is crosleycompany.com, and there is a whole tab up there of thought leadership. I think it's the third or fourth tab on, commentary or whatever it's called. And I'm on LinkedIn and do posting quite frequently, or I'm at Crosley at crosleycompany.com. So those are some good ways.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Gale. Well, this is it for another episode of Amplify, the podcast for accounting firm growth. Thank you so much for listening in. Let us know what you think about this episode on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd really appreciate it. And if you want to find out more about Amplify and all of our episodes, just head over to accountingmarketing.org and you will find the podcast under publications. If you'd like to find out more about me and my company, the Rainmaker Companies, head over to therainmakercompanies.com or email me at Angie at therainmakercompanies.com. See you next time.